Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for being here this morning. My name is Tonya Howe, and I am an instructional designer and technologist at George Mason University, and a former professor of literature at Marymount University, both in Virginia. I'm going to be doing the bulk of the presentation just for simplicity's sake, but I'm going to let Chris introduce herself now.
Hi, I'm Chris Ruotolo. I'm at the University of Virginia Library. I lead the team of Arts and Humanities liaisons, and I work on some digital humanities projects.
Okay, great, thanks. John wasn't able to join us today, but he and the many students who have worked on this project are definitely here in spirit. So on the front page, you'll notice that there's a Linktree link that has got a whole bunch of content that you might take a look at if you're curious, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Right? Can you go ahead and move the slide? So this presentation is going to sorry, I think we're on the wrong slide.
Yes.
There we go. Excellent. Yeah. So this session is going to introduce a project that we've been working on for a good many years, funded by the NEH and Viva. It's called, rather ambitiously, Literature in Context, an Open Anthology of Literature in English, 1400 to 1925. So it's available through any web browser or mobile device. It's offering teachers free, reliable, citable, printable digital texts for classroom use, particularly in, in a text-based, right, classroom like literature. So unlike a lot of print-based OER, Literature in Context makes use of a lot of interactive affordances of a digital platform like searchability, images, multimedia, collaborative annotations, dynamic mapping, social networking, and a lot of different reading options and download options. This is a shorter version of the talk that we had planned. So if you have questions, please, feel free to pop them in the chat and hopefully we'll be able to get to them. Next slide. So we have a Slido, anonymous sort of Slido available for you. It's here at this QR code. It's just a two-part question that we'd like to hear your thoughts on if you're so inclined. We really want to learn from you because this is kind of a new audience for us, which we're super excited about. What research should we be looking at as you're kind of listening to us go through? And if at any point you discover that you're interested in collaborating with us, also go ahead and, drop in your name and email address, and we'll be able to get in touch with you that way. Next slide. So we have created a video just to simplify the timeline for us. Literature in Context sorry, this video is just an overview. It's going to be available on YouTube. And we just kind of decided to do this to kind of truncate our time. So let's go ahead and take a look. This is just a video overview of some key features.
Literature in Context is at once an open educational resource and a large-scale digital humanities project grounded in the praxis of openness. It is a web-based database application that allows teachers to create their own custom course packs or mini anthologies. In this brief tour, we'll explore the basic features of the platform. Users can browse our database contents by author, title, publication location, or date of publication, and the site is searchable in a variety of different ways, including keyword search, search by title or author, and more. Each text creation is described in the source details, and those who participated in its construction are noted throughout the project. Texts are typically paginated according to the facsimile page images provided, and fully built-out editions include media-rich annotations. A citation for each text is automatically generated. Many texts also include audiobook versions so students can read along. All database contents are available for inclusion in custom course packs, whether in whole or in excerpted form. These course packs can be made available online for students, or they can be downloaded in a variety of forms. online, the course packs can be searched, and other features available on the entire site are also available for specific collections of material. The database itself is constructed through classroom collaborations, which help students understand literary history, textual digitization, research, and writing by practicing it in public with faculty mentors. Faculty can incorporate students in the construction of the collection in a variety of ways, from simple use and feedback to full digital edition construction. XML annotations are permanent parts of each digital edition, but the project also deploys a native hypothesis layer, which students and faculty can use in different ways, both public and private. A final feature of literature in context is its use of linked open data. Each text includes elements of linked data, specifically markup for people and places, which can be visualized through several native visualizations in our user interface. Some interactive visualizations included our timeline, a social network graph, and an interactive map. We are eager to work with new collaborators, so please do reach out. The project continues to grow thanks to generous funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities Office of Digital Humanities and VIVA, Virginia's Academic Library Consortium.
Hey, great, thanks.
Literature in
Sorry for that
context
snafu
is
there.
at once an open
Next
educational
slide.
literature in
Okay,
context
great. So we think, cool. So we think that there are some differences between existing OER textbooks and what we're doing. This is a database-driven Born Digital OER textbook co-created by students and faculty. Can you click? So it builds on existing public domain content, like a lot of the OERs that we've looked at, but it also does a few other things. It generates a sense of the material object, retains citability, foregrounds provenance and authorship. It's interactive in a lot of sort of new ways, including linked open data, social annotation, which definitely other OERs have, like Manifold, annotation pop-ups, and a few other things. Probably most importantly, it's curatable, allowing faculty to create their own anthologies, their own course packs, and it's downloadable in multiple forms. Next. But what is the best form for open digital textbooks? Next. There's some data on OER use, and many textbooks are reviewed for content, and we've heard actually quite a bit about this during Open Ed this year. But data on use of like specific features and analysis of the kinds of forms that are used to produce OER are hard to find. And so if you have ideas about this, we'd really love to hear them. Next slide. And go ahead and click. So our audience probably knows a lot more about this than us, but we really think that we need to be talking more about it. Conversations that usually happen in somewhat disparate arena, like critical digital pedagogy, open ed, and digital humanities, we think really need to be brought together to build a kind of critical vocabulary. A search of Humanities International Complete and Education Research Complete for combinations of OER, open education on the one hand, can you go, there you go. And on the other hand, digital humanities, and digital pedagogy repeatedly yield nothing, which I thought was really, really surprising. So these circles are often siloed because teaching and learning are problematically, we think, separated from scholarship. And this is a topic that's really been visible in several talks here as well. Next. So we think of we think of literature in context as a digital humanities project that's also an intervention in open education, because what it's doing is taking up in methodology and form questions of how knowledge is produced, and it incorporates a sort of computationally enhanced approach to OER, to pedagogy, and to the study of the humanities. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in this next slide. So by working with literature and context, students are going to be learning quite a few things. Some of the politics of canonicity They learn a little bit about curriculum development, open access, and so on. They learn about the process of digitization and markup, standardized vocabularies and metadata, and like why that's important. How to locate and evaluate quality reading editions. And that's something that involves a lot of other things like understanding provenance, historical context, and editorial choices. When students are working with literature and context as co-creators, they learn how to source appropriate media for our specific purpose and audience. And most of our work, happens in the classroom. So they're also learning about collaborative writing, research, and revision. And then finally, they're also learning how their voices can shape student experiences, because this project, of course, then becomes a tool that later classrooms can use. And finally, faculty can create their own agile targeted course packs to suit their specific needs. We are, I think, going to skip the next slide because this has another video, and the video that we're going to skip is one that shows
To
us
create your custom course pack.
How to create custom course packs. That link is available in the link tree and of course also on the presentation. So if we have time later, we can go back to it. But for the time being, let's go ahead and take a look at—
To create your custom course pack, you'll first—
Sorry. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the existing OER that already are out there in the same arena. So we took a look at two repositories for open educational resources. We took a look at OER Commons, and we also took a look at the Open Textbook Network. And so in OER Commons, there were 7 anthologies in literature. Most of them are American Lit, and actually, surprisingly, a lot of them were from the earlier portion of American Lit. There's one Brit Lit for the second half. There's also a really interesting Hispanic literature anthology, and this is actually one of the only ones that incorporated student collaboration and noted it in the editorial contents. And then there's one Intro to World Lit. All of these, which is also sort of surprising to us, are available in Pressbooks, except for one of the broad surveys of American Lit, which is only available for download as PDF. So there's some interesting kind of things that we're noticing here in terms of contents and what goes into an OER in literature. Next slide. We also took a look at the Open Textbook Network. There's some overlap between these two repositories, but not always identical, right? So this had 10 anthologies, and there's a lot more variety, I think, here. You'll see a lot more Brit Lit 1 and 2, a lot more World Lit, and again, the Hispanic Literature Anthology. In this database, in this collection, only one was in Manifold. Most of the others were in Pressbooks, but surprisingly, a lot of them were also only available in PDF or actually for purchase in hard copy at Amazon or other print-on-demand kind of locations. And it's interesting, too, that only one of these, the very last one, Writing the Nation, appeared on Amazon also as a Kindle download. The hard copy versions that you can purchase are upwards of $100, close to $100 each. So one of the key things, of course, that OER is supposed to do is to reduce costs, but part of that, is something that I think we still maybe need to think about. Next slide. So there are a lot of characteristic affordances of these OER anthologies that we looked at. Most of them use conventional survey periods, and they have pre-selected content, which you would obviously expect in an anthology, right? But it's something that you kind of don't notice until you maybe are thinking about it in a slightly different way, which is something that we're going to talk about. There are no page numbers, which is also very interesting. There are no line numbers. Longer texts, if they're included, are broken down not by page, but by chapter or act, right, usually. So plays will be broken down by act or maybe scene, but usually it's act. It's really the only one that we've seen. Most of them have have images that are sourced in different ways. They are all sourced. Some have video links, few do. Some have hyperlinked footnotes. We didn't notice any audiobook versions that are kind of included in these, so that's another kind of characteristic of some of these earlier anthologies. A lot of them, of course, have introductions to sections or to excerpts, so that's something that's very useful. Interestingly enough, a lot of the written content is given source provenance, but not always. Things like introductions or even the texts themselves that are included. You know, where did this text come from? Did you get it from Project Gutenberg? Did you get it from, you know, where else did you sort of source this from? It's something that's not always sourced, which is something that's also kind of interesting. Next. There's one useful, I think, important kind of characteristic of these OERs is that there's additional references, maybe discussion questions or outcomes. And this is, of course, really important because OER is definitely tied to pedagogy and to those pedagogical outcomes. So these are some of the characteristic affordances of OER anthologies. But let's take a look on the next slide at some maybe problems. So can we go back to the previous slide? Yeah, so one really important kind of feature of all of these anthologies that we kind of looked at is that despite being online, the print origins of the content are being reproduced, but in ways that aren't necessarily sort of positives or ways that aren't necessarily drawing on some of the key benefits of print, right? Like citability, page numbers, a sense of the material page, things like that. So we think that print origins are sort of paradoxically being reproduced in digital anthologies. And that's something that our approach, hopefully, right, maybe brings some new topics to the table in terms of. So there are some challenges with our approach. And those include one kind of big one, right, is that it has to do with findability and discoverability, and maybe even use as a result of that. A lot of the textbook repositories use specific kinds of content, and our work doesn't really fit those methods of an OER, so it's hard to kind of put it into these repositories, and that might impact discoverability. We have a lot more that we can talk about in terms of challenges to our approach. Can we open up all of this? But if you can go back to the prior, sorry, not the next one, next screen. But ultimately, we kind of think with Robin DeRosa that we need to re-theorize textbooks because, and this is a really great quote that was used in the introductory keynote, which I was very happy to sort of hear about. But you know, if we don't re-theorize these textbooks, often they're going to be repositories for pre-existing ideas, and so so we really think that we ought to kind of reorient our approach to open educational resources, specifically in terms of literature anthologies. There are a lot of different topics that will come into conversation about, you know, subject-based anthologies or collections. But in literature anthologies, there's sort of it's sort of a different conversation, we think. We did do some preliminary data. Can you move forward? In terms of student feedback about use. Next slide. Features that students really used this term. The purple are downloading, right? Printing. The red have to do with annotations, and the gray are kind of others. And then next slide. Least and most helpful features of literature and context. The purple is the most helpful, and the red are what people thought of as least helpful. And so we can take a look at these in more detail if you know that's something that we want to talk about. But in terms of time, that's all we have left for you today. And so we'll open it up for conversation. Thank you so much. There was one comment in the chat. Is there login, or do you have to join or something? That was from Brad. The only reason that you would have to log in is if you created your own anthology. Otherwise, it's completely open. It takes, it tracks no data, keeps no, material from students and so on, other than what they have released for use through FERPA, through a release form. Let's see. Any other questions or comments? I know we're kind of running out of time. Let's see. Yeah, Megan, that's a great question. Megan asked if does it include contextual background information? Yeah, so we usually have information about the author. There's often a sort of a header, like a head note, really, attached to many of the texts and authors that are in our text. Currently, the Deb site has almost 300 works by 90 different authors. We're still in the process of getting head notes written, so if you would like to contribute a head note, that would be fantastic. But we do include information like that in the source component of each text. Yeah, it's a great question. Bridget, is this connected to the CLIC work that was used in high schools? No, it's not. No, this is very separate, but I'd like to hear more about that if you would be interested in sharing that information with us. Let's see, any other questions? We're happy to stay a bit after and take informal questions, but you're definitely welcome to stay behind. But we're going to have to conclude the session now, and I want to thank Tonya for helping us get through the presentation. Oh, thanks, Bridget. That's really helpful. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you so much.
Oh, I see, Bridget. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. We really do want this to be totally free, and we want it to be something that the teacher is able to use with ease, but without being forced to choose from pre-selected materials, right? So, if you wanted to develop an entirely specific theme-based anthology, you really could do that with the contents. You could make it look like anything you wanted to, or even add new things with your students. So it's infinitely expandable is kind of the idea. Definitely free. Excellent. Well, thanks everybody. I'm sorry for the short snafu. Sorry for the little bit of the snafu with the sound. We did that so it would be easier. Maybe it was more complicated. Anyway, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, definitely do get in touch. Thanks. Let's see. I think that was it, right? Yeah, good. Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, that was more challenging than I thought it would be technically, but yeah, I think it was it all worked out well in the end.
Yeah, I think it did all work out. So I got a little excited about doing fun things with the presentation, which I probably shouldn't have done.
Well, you couldn't have predicted that it would be like hard to share and all of that, but
yeah. But it was good. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it.
yeah, and it was, I don't know if we're still being recorded now or not.
I don't
but
think so.
okay. It's a really, I think